So welcome to the sixth episode of the Joseph M. Leather podcast. Today I'm with Charlie from Equus Leather, a business that is founded on craftsmanship and bringing some of the finest leather, buckles and thread to their customers. Handcrafted in England, Equest is sold all around the world. They are a small business that takes care of their customers and quote, everything we make is made by one person for another. We make sure our workshop list always has the customer's name along with their order product. At no time does anyone just become a number. We strongly believe keeping the link between the customer who has ordered from us and the individual craftsperson who made it is a key part of our formula. Welcome on the show, Charlie.
Hi, Joseph. Nice to meet you.
It's good to meet you as well. Sort of like I said briefly before, that 2 years ago, no leathercraft experience, and I came across a video by you, and yeah, what you see now is sort of my development from that video and constant trials and errors. So it's good to be able to talk to the person that actually got me into leathercraft.
Well, thank you for watching, and I'm really glad that it inspired you. That's sort of part of the reason that we shoot the videos and stuff like that. Really, is to communicate the craft, and it's amazing the feedback that we get from them. There's a lot of people who have said exactly what you said, and it always slightly made something that we've done has had that kind of impact on people. It's lovely to hear, and if ever you're having a bad day and somebody, people like send us messages on Instagram and say stuff like that, it's really cool. It's really nice that you're able to have that impact on people and inspire them to do something that you love and you value. So yeah, it's really nice to hear.
Yeah, do you think that, because I looked up the date of that video and that's from 2016, do you think that there's been a huge increase of leathercraft compared to back then?
Probably it was happening before then as well. It's the people are getting keener on making stuff with their hands from the point of view of like people physically making stuff. From the point of view of people buying stuff, I think they're getting keener on people making things as well. Yeah, I think so. I mean, clearly we can take no credit for that, but yeah, I think there's been quite an upswing in interest and stuff like that. So like there's quite a big subreddit about leathercraft and stuff like that. And like I think if you went back to the 90s, probably it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
I think in the 90s people would have thought, well, that's a massively unhip thing from the 70s, and like we were forced to do it scout camp or whatever, and we don't want to ever do that again. And I think that the next, like, it's taken a generation for people to forget about that and move away from it, and to think, well, this is a cool thing to do. And I think there's been a big upswing over sort of my working life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the internet has changed everything entirely, and it brings people together. Like if the internet didn't, you and I have ever had a conversation, or how would you have ever seen a photograph inside my workshop? It's changed everything.
Yeah.
And it's inspired people to do stuff they'd never have thought of before, because they've seen pretty pictures, and it's made it far more accessible. It's made a really niche thing kind of visible and accessible. And I've got a friend who's a really, really high-end blacksmith, and you can see exactly the same thing from them as well. There's the blacksmiths have had a massive upswing from more or less having died out entirely.
Yeah.
The artist or artisan blacksmith is really hip and trendy again, and can be seen all over Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. Just if you think 15 years or 20 years, like, could you have a business that operates like this? Because you don't deal with a lot of people face to face, and it's so handy to be able to just, work from home or, wherever someone works from, and just post to people all over the world. It's It's just...
Yeah, there's no way. I did have a business in the days before the internet doing this, and it basically didn't work in a meaningful way. The internet changed everything. The internet is why you can, or we can, do what we can do, and other people can do what they can do, because we sell more to individual streets in New York than we do to 100-mile radius around here. Because of the internet, and without that, it would be entirely unviable to do what we do and what lots of other people do as well.
Yeah.
It makes it change the world in huge ways for people like us.
Yeah, it's absolutely remarkable, and yeah, I know it's, and that's sort of the feedback I get from other people I speak to. It's just like the internet has helped, advertisement through social media has helped. It's remarkable. Like everyone has sort of a similar story when it comes with it.
Yeah.
Well,
The world has become a much smaller place because of it.
Yeah.
A much more connected place.
Yeah.
And it means that we don't have kind of a radius of 50 miles around us to sell to, or even England to sell to. We've got the whole world to sell to.
Yeah.
And you don't need to sell to in any way a large proportion of those people to have a good business. So yeah, it's changed the leather industry completely.
Yeah, exactly. And also where you can, your supplies as well, like the supply chain, like you can just go on. I think I was on websites yesterday looking for bridal leather, and it's just looking at such and such in this country, and it's just you just flick them an email. It's just the supply chain.
It's certainly made life easier. I mean, I think people probably always did buy like that, but they would have had catalogues or whatever, and they'd have done it by letter. I bought at auction last year, and haven't really done anything with it since, but I bought a tool collection belonging to a man whose name I forget, but he was demobbed from the army at the end of World War II, and I've got all the documentation for it. He wrote a letter to Osborne's, as in the tool makers in America, wanting to buy his workshop. He bought a workshop basically from Osborne's, and he did exactly what you were doing, but he did it by post. So I've got all of the typed letters, all the correspondence between he and Osborne's, and I've got his entire workshop contents basically sitting there waiting to be catalogued. So it's always been the same, but it's just faster and more efficient these days.
Yeah.
So I think the kind of the back, like the business end, the buying leather and buying tools and stuff, has always been pretty global, actually, surprisingly so. But yeah, it's the getting to customers that's really, really phenomenally changed.
Yeah. I know it's only, and it's not that long ago either. You're talking about less than 100 years ago. So in that time,
yeah. Well, even like I started doing this 25 years ago, and I can't remember whether I'd have ordered by phone or by post, but I'd have been looking at a physical paper catalogue, undoubtedly, because there wouldn't have been anything else. And yeah, so it's changed completely since I started.
Yeah. And was it most of that stuff in the UK you got? Because you got a quite good selection of tanneries and nearby.
All of my tools and all of my leather when I started would have been English. Quite a lot of the leather's still English. Quite a lot of it's French and stuff like that as well now. But I've got a fairly eclectic tool collection.
Yeah.
Quite a lot of which is French and a little bit of American, little bit of Korean and stuff like that. But yeah. I mean, we've got quite a thriving saddlery industry here. So it's a good place to be for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like with you guys. You're quite a horsey nation, so I imagine you can probably get quite a lot there as well. But yeah, we've got quite a strong industry here for some stuff anyway.
Yeah. I don't reckon as big as England though. I know that it's interesting because a lot of Australian culture has that British influence to it. which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
Like when it comes to schools, like private schools, like Blazers, a lot of things
Yeah.
are taken from the English, and I guess that's English heritage and English culture in us.
Well, we are cousins and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, I guess that was my first question because. So, what was your story? How did you get into leatherwork?
Well, I come from a family where there's sort of lots of old luggage and kind of leatherwork kicking around. So I've always grown up with nice leatherwork and seen it and kind of been influenced by it. When I was a young man, I rode horses for a living rather than did saddlery. But as part of that, obviously, I was involved with saddlery, which is leatherwork. And I ended up, I was riding horses for a living, and my trainer was a guy who was he worked for a company called Giddens, who became later part of Swain Adeney Brig. He was a master saddler with them and got fed up with it and went back to training people to compete on horses. And I ended up being based with him, training to ride horses, and I picked up kind of the saddlery stuff from him, and ended up with kind of a small saddlery business that was the start of Equus, effectively. So the first Equus belt was made when I was probably 20, which was 25 years ago. And this was pre-internet days, so kind of the world was very different than it was now. And it kind of remained a very small, kind of rather part-time business. And I went off and I went to university, and I did some stuff after that. I ran the training and finance function for a sort of a medium-sized training business, and I ended up. The company changed hands and stuff like that, and I ended up as a contractor rather than an employee, which is always quite good because you get paid more to do less work, so that's quite nice. But it meant I had quite a lot more time, and some friends asked us. I had all my tools and stuff because I'd obviously bought them when I was 20 odd. Some friends had a charity garden party, and they wanted stalls to come and sell stuff to raise some money for charity. I thought, well, I'd been wanting to. I had all of my old belts, but I'd fancied making something, and I thought, well, why don't I make some belts and I'll take them along to this garden party, and I'll sell them for 20 quid or something. And I did, and they're really good, and were really surprised and thought, well, and bought them left, right, and centre. And I thought, well, this obviously there's something here that wasn't originally. And we started going to kind of the local country fairs and stuff and selling online, and it just kind of took off and went from there. And the rest is history. And that was 13 or 14 years ago, something like that.
Wow.
And because I was already working for myself, kind of working for yourself in a different capacity is pretty easy, really. It's not the massive leap of faith that would be giving up a permanent job, because I didn't have a permanent job. I was a contractor, and so it was everything lined up in the right way, and the rest is history, as they say.
Yeah. So you did do saddlery for a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
That's how I started.
Yeah.
That's how I started.
Yeah.
Was making, and we still do a little bit.
Yeah.
Bridles and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that's my professional background is saddlery.
Yeah.
And leather goods came later.
Yeah.
But that's why our stuff looks like it looks, really, is because actually really I'm a saddler.
Yeah.
That's my background.
Because I was actually going to ask you this, because is the saddlery different to what it is in is the saddles that you make in the UK, are they different to what you see in Australia and in America? Is it more of the lighter? They're
totally different than the Western saddles you'd see in America.
Yeah.
I think that probably functionally identical to most of the saddles that you would see in Australia. Okay. Australia being more or less England in the context of sport. Whereas the American West is the American West, and that's a whole different culture and ball game. But kind of sport horses like we have in England, the sport horses like you have in Australia.
Yeah.
And we compete at the same sports and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And likewise in bits of America, but there isn't the Western influence.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically, if I it's the same stuff really.
Okay. They're more of the lighter, like littleish saddles. Is that the?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Not a great big thing that's designed for rounding up cattle.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And with the when you were making those belts, are they sort of similar to what you sell now? Have you?
Yes, they're identical.
Wow,
the ones we sell now are better made.
Yeah.
They're functionally identical, probably even down to the details of the pattern from the ones I made 20 years ago. Just the ones I make now are better. Yeah. But if you took two and put them next door to each other, I'd be horrified by the stitching in the 20-year-old ones. But it's the same belt.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wow.
Even the same. We use the same buckles for some of them. Absolutely identical.
Wow.
All that's changed is we've got better at what we do, really.
Yeah.
Same leather. We use the same leather from the same suppliers and the same buckles from the same suppliers we did then.
That's remarkable. Yeah, but when you touch a nice piece of bridle leather, like a bridle leather belt, it's black and white compared to polyurethane.
Absolutely, or even more or less any other leather. It's very, very good for what it's intended for, and it makes amazing belts. It makes really, really good belts. It is. Yeah.
Well, then I guess because you answered the next one, so how did Equest start? Which so that's sort of you sort of explained that. So what year would have that been? 13 years ago, 2008.
Yeah, that sounds right. I think it was probably 2007. 2007 rings a bell. It all merges into one a bit, but I think it was 2007. It was right at the start of the financial crisis.
Yeah.
So we started a new business right at the time when everything fell to bits, when Enron collapsed and the banks were falling down and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was quite a challenging time. It was. We started out very small in a back bedroom, basically, and I obviously wasn't starting from scratch because I had more a smaller tool collection than I do now, but nonetheless kind of the tools that I needed and the knowledge to use them, and started out in a back bedroom with a credit card and some hope and an internet connection, really.
Wow.
We did when we first started. We did do like the country shows. So you probably have the same over there. You've got
markets.
your local shows. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we did stuff like that. But the internet beckoned, and it's a much more effective method of selling stuff. So we just ended up doing that, really.
Yeah. Yeah, can you sort of, with the global financial crisis, because I know that I was in year 7 when that happened, and it didn't really affect Australia as much, I know, from at the time. So can you sort of, paint a picture in my head of, because I know in the States it was, huge, and I'm not really...
the States and the UK.
Okay, yeah, so what sort of... I know it sounds such a stupid question.
Well,
how would you explain it to? Yeah, because
it was. I mean, it was a time when finance was not available.
Yeah.
The lots of there were in England there was one or two kind of runs on banks, as in people queuing, a massive queue, half a mile long, of people all wanting to get their money out of one or two of the banks because they thought that the bank was going to collapse. So it was kind of pretty serious, really.
Yeah.
It was an interesting time to be starting a business because we started so small. We had no additional costs, and we were younger and had smaller bills, and you were able to, because I was an IT contractor at the time, so I was able to do a bit of that and a bit of leather and stuff like that, and kind of worked through the storm, living rather hand to mouth, and seeing what would happen. It would be, I mean, it's functionally equivalent to starting a business in the middle of COVID, I suppose, which lots of people have done as well.
Yeah.
In quite a similar way, in that they've seen an opportunity, in that they've got time and nothing much else to do, and why not? And I suppose that's what we did, really. Is there was some available time. I had an idea that I thought would work, and I thought, well, why not? It's worth a try. I enjoy doing it, and people seem to be enthusiastic, so why not give it a go?
Yeah.
But I think the day I put the website, or certainly the week that I put the website live, we sold something.
Wow.
Which kind of cemented it in my mind, like with not with AdWords, not with anything like that, just simply sticking it on the internet. Somebody bought something, and that I distinctly remember that and thinking, well, kind of that has to bode quite well, sort of it's worth giving it a go.
Was that in the UK or was it overseas?
Yeah.
Yep.
It was, ironically, it was a tub of leather feed rather than anything we'd actually made. And it was to the UK. I can't remember anything more about it than that. But that's what it was. It was a large tub of Cedric leather feed. It was our first ever internet sale, and yeah, it happened basically instantly, which is quite cool, and it illustrates the power of the internet.
Yeah. So then, how long did it take for you to be able to go full time with? Because I think
I can't remember.
I think we underestimate like perseverance these days, because like viral videos, you post something, it goes viral. You don't have that luxury back then.
No, I mean, I would think it might have taken a year or so of me doing kind of a bit of IT contracting, a bit of riding horses, a bit of kind of random income generation activity, in addition to, I would say maybe a year or so. Maybe a year or so.
Yeah. Okay.
It seems like quite a long time ago. I can't remember.
Yeah. So then, how did your YouTube channel come about? Because YouTube 2007, that's only 1 years old.
Yeah. Is that the YouTube channel came about as a result of starting to make the films, basically. And I think for the first one, we were thinking about how to release it after we'd made it and what to do. And the guys were really keen on Vimeo, which we still use. And they were adamant that YouTube was a really silly idea. And definitely shouldn't put it on YouTube, because not the right audience. We want to do we're doing high quality stuff, and none of this YouTube nonsense. That's for amateurs. And I said, it doesn't actually do any harm. There's no harm in doing it. Like, if people don't watch it, they don't watch it. Like, what's the problem in releasing it and it not being watched? It doesn't cost anybody anything. So we put it on YouTube as well. And in a much smaller way, once again, the rest is history. That would have been the Lined and Raised Belt film and the Watchstrap film. And like, the Lined and Raised Belt film is well over 1 million views last time I saw it.
Yeah, 1.6.
And that was pretty popular, more or less straight away, versus our entirely minuscule Vimeo audience, which we use for like hosting the videos, basically. But the actual number of watches is very, very small versus YouTube. And it just seems like it's nice to get stuff out to a wider audience. and it's not really about doing anything commercial or anything. It's just nice to get kind of quality stuff in front of people. And what I've always what we do is slightly weird and quite expensive and rather niche. And I've always felt that it's our job as craftspeople or as business people in crafts to educate our audience, not necessarily the leathercrafter audience, because that's an accident. And I was never massively intending to make stuff for the leather crafter audience. I'm happy to do it, but it was never really what we intended to do. But it's kind of trying to show people that this is why what we do is what we do, and this is how we do it. And like, you get a lot of comments partially from customers, but partially, like, interestingly, actually on YouTube, like, people who don't actually believe that you make things in the way that you say you make them. So it's kind of quite a nice way of showing people how things are made. Like, even despite the fact that you've completely just shown somebody how you make something on YouTube. I've given up reading the comments on YouTube because they're the comments on YouTube. But like, the number of time people say, well, yeah, this is lovely, but where's the factory in China and stuff? Not getting the point that this is the factory. You are looking into it. This is my workbench. This is not just marketing. This is actually how it happens. And it's such a rare thing that people just don't believe it anymore, which is a bit sad that people have to be that cynical. And you can understand why. But but I suppose that was why I wanted to put stuff on YouTube. It's a nice way of reaching a wider audience and making what you do a bit more transparent and visible to the public. And that's got to be a good thing for everybody. It's good for us because it's nice promotion. It's good for the craft because it helps people to understand why it's important and all that kind of stuff. So it's probably not a very coherent answer, but that's sort of the answer.
No, well, it is true though, because there's been such a spotlight and such the reputation of some of these brands have been tarnished, and from where these products are made, how they make them, marketing is a huge thing, like how deceptive marketing can be.
We try quite hard to do as much honesty in advertising as we can. You've got to take pretty photographs, but and it's acceptable to take photographs, but it's not acceptable to take deceptive photographs. And there's it's not even a fine line, it's quite a broad line about kind of what's acceptable and what's not, and you can't deceive or seek to deceive with your photography, I don't think. It's always a tough one. But the big companies don't even try not to, I don't think. Hardly anybody, in all honesty, probably tries not to. Loads of people do exactly what, as you described earlier, like, rub something with a bit of cloth, then say it's a handmade shoe, and it's rubbish, really. It distresses me greatly. Me as well. It's ultimately, you've got to deliver what it is you're advertising, and I think it's really important that you could tart everything up so it looks amazing always, or play with the color balance, so colors are the way that you'd like them to be rather than the way that they are and stuff. But ultimately you've got to deliver that product to a customer. So you've got to be truthful in what you're portraying. Otherwise somebody's going to ring up and say, well, I bought this and it looks amazing in the photograph, but actually it's not like that at all, which would be awful.
Well, my sister, she bought something online the other day, and she said it arrived in the mail, and on the website they must have stuffed up the order. It was like a red, but when she got it, it was like a fluorescent orange.
Really?
I don't know how. It must have been a mix up, but that's the extreme. But I doubt someone would be doing something like that. I was looking on your YouTube channel. The first video was that flint. What is it? The
lined and raised belt.
It's the edge finishing using the heated flint.
Okay.
But there's no. The comments are turned off on that one, but Yeah, that lined and raised belt one. I actually made a belt from watching that video. I actually made a lined and raised
Did
belt.
you?
I got
Cool.
it. I got it in my cupboard. I'll get it and show you. But
Yeah, I do.
I remember I
They're
watched.
hard work.
Oh, like I didn't have a splitter, so I had to get it split. In
Yeah.
Victoria, in New South Wales, by someone. He did it for free as well, which was great.
Mm.
When I got it split, came back and I like watched, all the every scene in like detail, and
Yeah.
I made one. And the annoying thing was, or what I found though, is when you were stitching the top part onto the bottom part,
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
like lift off, like the stitching would make the other side lift off. So there was a bit, um, yeah, but it was a bit knackered through but it wasn't as clean as yours. Like I noticed that when I changed the thread over, because you can't stitch the whole thing off thread,
No, no, you can't.
there was like a strong indent of where I pulled the stitch line. So there's sort of like a dent,
Okay.
like a
We don't make masses of them,
yeah,
but we make quite a lot of them.
yeah,
They are definitely quite hard work. I quite like making those actually because they're hard work because there's a lot of stitching, but they're actually really easy to make.
yeah,
With hindsight, compared with some of the stuff we make now, which is really complex by comparison,
yeah,
they're quite refreshing because it's a relatively simple design because it goes back to kind of when we very first started, really.
yeah,
And there's limited complexity and limited scope for error, and it's just that they are. I haven't made one for a little while actually, but they are quite nice.
yeah. They are. You're the ones on the on. Yeah, I'll go get it. It's just in my cupboard, and I'll show you it.
Yeah, get it, go. Yeah, keeper looks good.
See how there's like the, not sure how. There's like when I've changed stitches. See how it's like it's been.
I really can't see it well enough to do it justice, which is frustrating because I'd like to be able to see it. You'll have to send me some photos.
Yeah, I will. But
From what little I can see, it looks nice, and it looks like it survived well.
yeah, I don't wear it anymore. I've noticed when you do wear it, it feels nice. Like it's a nice thick.
Yeah, they are. They are. We kind of deliberately keep ours kind of quite chunky because we do the calf belts and stuff as well. So we've got thin.
Yeah.
And yeah, we kind of try to keep them kind of more or less 6 mil in the middle.
Yeah.
Which is kind of quite substantial, really.
Yeah.
They are nice. They take when they're broken in particular, they're nice. But they're definitely they're quite good chunky thing. I've still got the first one I ever made, which is upstairs.
Yeah.
And which is it really hefty because I think I split it with a really bad splitter that I had at the time, and I didn't take very much off it, and it's a really thick belt. I wonder how thick it actually is. I'll have to measure it at some point.
Yeah.
I should really get some of the really old things out and take photographs of them.
Yeah, you should.
Because it's always quite interesting.
Yeah, it was such a. I was watching like every scene in detail to see what you were doing, and it was a good little.
I was. It's really interesting, and I was doing more or less exactly the same thing, not with that video, but with I can't remember which one it was, one of the other ones, and I was looking at some of the stitching stuff because I'm mid book writing at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's a good question. I need to ask you that as well.
And I was writing, I think, the stitching chapter, and like something that you do such a lot of. It's like my brain doesn't necessarily automatically know what my hands do, and the videos, like in part, are really clear, but actually, because they're shot to look pretty, really, it's not like it's not a teaching video, it's not designed to be a teaching video, so you can't see everything, and it actually must be really frustrating for people at times because like the lovely pretty close-ups show you some parts beautifully, but kind of if you were just trying to use them to learn, it would definitely be a bit frustrating. At some stage I'll have to shoot some that are simply a static shot where you can just see everything.
Well, actually, I remember I learned because I was watching different saddle stitching videos, and a lot of it was I Oh yeah, I focused on like your video because I sort of just copied what you did, like put the thread over and then like flick it over. Don't know why it
Yeah,
flicks over, but just flick it over. And
yeah,
yeah, I remember there was like some parts. It's like, well, like what's he doing? Like how? I think one of the parts that it was like mind-boggling in my head. Where do you know how you can get the stitches symmetrical on both sides?
yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when there was a point where I loved the front stitch, but I didn't like the back stitch because it looks chunkier and and I was looking at that Lloyd wall. I was like, how did he get it like both sides? And it was like, oh, so frustrating. And then I think I managed to find a way to do it. I know that there's a part where you line the leather on top of the other leather, and you get the stitch lines, like you line them all up.
Yeah,
And
reverse pricking. Have you come across right and left-handed pricking irons?
oh, yeah, I've heard them. Yep, yeah,
So you book match pieces of leather um, to create what you're saying. So you've got basically an identical stitch on the front and the back.
okay,
In order to do that, you've got to have a print mark on the front and the back.
yeah,
And to do that, you've got to use a right-handed pricking iron and a left-handed pricking iron because the stitch marks won't match otherwise. So
yeah. That's true. That's true because they sort of go like this.
exactly, they'll
Yeah,
cross. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So you've got to use a right on the front notionally, and you've got to use a left on the back notionally, presuming that you're a right-hander.
yeah,
And you've got to perfectly line up the stitch marks such that when your awl goes through the front hole, it comes out of the back hole.
yeah,
And that's how you do it.
yeah. Okay, that's good.
Well, that's one of the ways to do it anyway. That's the traditional classical method of doing it,
Wow. Okay.
because you need the prick mark in order to have the stitch
Yeah.
sitting nicely on the back. You can have a neat stitch line on the back without, but you'll never get quite the degree of kind of the stitch sitting flush and looking nice
Yeah.
without the hole going into the back rather than the hole coming out of the back
Yeah.
is crucial in how the stitch lies.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I don't use pricking irons. I did buy some pricking irons from Abbey, but I found
Yeah.
because I'm not used to using an awl, and
Yeah.
I find that they were too little, the pricks that you put in. So I just used a normal. I know it's cheating. It's horrible. We use the stitching chisel. They take the. But what I do though,
It's not horrible, but
what I do is there was two ways I was doing it. Firstly, I was actually pricking, like I was getting both pieces of leather and punching the holes with it and just lining it up, punching the holes with it, and glue it together. But how I do it now is when I glue it together, I'll just get my little stitching chisel and I'll just like tap a little bit so it doesn't go all the way through, and go that all the way around. And then on the back side, you don't need to tap as hard, but as long as you get like a little hole that goes through the leather, it lines up fine.
Yeah. You can do all of those kinds of things.
Yeah.
For a pricking iron like the ones you've got from Abbey, you need to use an awl. Because you've got the small holes. What you need is you've got a diamond awl, which is, as the name suggests, diamond shaped. So it's like triangular on each side, and the wide bit of the awl stretches the hole as you push the awl through. So it makes a small hole temporarily big, so your needles and your thread will fit through.
Yeah.
So that's why you were struggling with it, is because the hole was too little.
Yeah.
The learning to stitch with an awl is quite tricky, but it does mean that you can do stuff like that much more easily.
Yeah. Do you need a smaller awl for it? Because I think I got the 3.1 millimeter. I think it's like the 2.8 or I think it's the 2.8 9 stitches per inch or something like that. Do you need a smaller awl for that, or a smaller needle?
Yeah, well, the awl should be about the same size as the hole that the pricking iron is making. You don't
Yeah.
want to physically make the hole bigger. You just want to widen it slightly so your needles will go through.
Yeah.
So probably relatively small.
Okay.
Abby will undoubtedly sell you one.
Yeah. So when you do the the right to left to make it line up, is when you put the
Yeah.
needle through, do you have to flick that piece over still the thread over? Because when
Yes,
I
you
okay
saddle stitch exactly the same as you always do.
okay
And the all you've done is effectively you've created a perfect hole that goes notionally all the way through the leather. Uh, in the saddlery world, it's not strictly correct to make a hole that goes all the way through the leather, although actually it can be quite useful at times.
yeah
When you're reverse pricking, you don't have to do that. Your hole doesn't have to go all the way through because your awl can go all the way through. But
yeah
what you have done is you've created a prick mark on the front and the back that match perfectly.
yeah
So you've got the two. The crosses don't cross. They're exactly the same size, or
yeah
they're exactly the same orientation
yeah
from the point of view of the awl, if that makes sense.
yeah 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 because when I do it my way where it would be like that. You don't have to
Yeah,
throw the thread over. You can just go straight through, and it lines up like perfectly both sides.
it'll. Yeah, yeah. But what you don't then have is you don't have a knot in the middle of your leather. You've just got the thread crossing, so
Yeah.
it'll unravel more easily if the thread is damaged or something. So
Okay.
it's sort of to a degree, it's not actually saddle stitch,
Yeah.
because saddle stitch should have a
Oh yeah.
knot
Yeah.
in the and there's actually there are variations of saddle stitch where you wouldn't cast anyway. For example, if you're stitching really thin leather and you cast, you'll get a really pretty angle on the back and a dead straight stitch in the front because there's no room for the knot in the middle to go. There are situations where you can't cast, and it's kind of being a bit to say, well, that's not saddle stitch, is it? But it is a weaker stitch as a consequence.
Okay.
So it's probably better to do it with left and right pricking irons if you can.
Okay.
But if what you're doing works for you and it gives you the look that you want, then that's obviously absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But there is a reason for the complexity. It's not just people making it complicated to entertain themselves.
Yeah.
It does work well.
Yeah. So because when you said when you use the left and right and it lines up perfectly,
Yeah,
is that no different to if you just punch all the way through with just a normal stitching chisel?
it's a little bit different.
Okay.
It's different in two respects. If you're reverse pricking, the hole, and this is quite an important one, the hole is going into the leather,
Yeah.
whereas if you punched a hole or you've poked it with an awl, the hole is coming out of the leather. So the stitch will sit better because the hole is going into the leather.
Okay. Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
and
Yeah.
and it's impossible to do that any other way than
Yeah.
reverse pricking.
Yeah.
The generally speaking, most of the tools that are designed to go all the way through leather are quite big and crude as well. So you get a really big, quite crude hole. But there are pricking irons now that are designed to go all the way through thin leather that actually produces a hole just exactly as you get from an awl. Like the KS blades, pricking irons produce a really elegant, refined hole. And I don't think there's anything we use them for some stuff, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that.
Yeah.
It works really nicely. But the pricking chisels are typically designed to go through quite thick leather,
Yeah.
so you've got a whacking great big tooth that leaves a really big hole.
Yeah.
And that then spoils your stitching because you've got a massive hole that you would have to use massive thread to fill and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it depends on the tool.
Yeah.
But given the right sort of pricking arm that's designed to go all the way through, that definitely works. Definitely does.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense because when you do punch all the way through, you sort of get that leather sort of like pokes out of the hole.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, I never thought of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you, what was I going to say? So with the pricking irons, how hard do you have to hit them?
Yeah.
Because I remember when I was using, I was trying to use them like a stitching chisel, like trying to just get it through the leather because the awl was just a pain to use. You don't need to press them that hard.
If you're just no, not particularly hard. It needs to
Okay.
penetrate the grain, but not much
Okay.
more than that.
Yeah.
You want to have a hole that doesn't go all the way through, but that you can easily. You should be able to find the hole with the tip of your awl without looking at it.
Yeah.
So you're using touch to locate the hole, not kind of peering at it, basically,
Yeah.
because that's much faster. Using an awl when you're good at it is much faster than not using an awl, because
Wow.
you use it to locate the hole, and you use it to locate the hole on the back of the work. So
Mhm.
you poke your awl through, and you've got the blade sticking out of the back of the hole.
Yeah.
You then use your index finger and your needle on your left hand to touch the awl blade, and then pull the awl out, and then the needle just drops straight into the hole. So you don't need to kind of bend over and look at the back of the work. It just happens automatically.
Yeah. Yeah. You've made me want to do that. Use pricking irons now, because I've seen.
It takes quite.
Well, with the awl, is there? Because I just have like a cheap awl. It's not a heavily. It's not like a really good awl. Is there? Is it night and day when it comes to awls? Like, is it a cheap one good
Yeah,
enough or
it
not
can
really?
be. A cheap one that you've titivated is probably good enough.
Okay.
They've got to be really smooth. They've got to not have a sharp, spiky point.
Yeah.
They've got to be the right size, rather like pricking irons. If it's like a massively big blade and you're trying to stitch a watch strap or something, it's never going to work well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, awls aren't particularly expensive, really. You can buy blades from somebody like Blanchard for like a few pounds for a blade. And when you get them, they'll be rubbish. But the steel's good, the design's good. You just have to spend a bit of time polishing them, and
Yeah.
they're absolutely fine.
Okay.
But they've got to be polished.
Yeah.
That's what really makes the difference. And they'll polish in use, but they'll be absolutely appalling when new if you don't. And likewise for the cheap ones, but probably worse because they'll be rubbish steel as well. So they'll be not polished and they'll bend.
Yeah. Is the polish? What sort of polish do you use?
If I possibly can, I buy them already nice, to be honest, because it takes quite a long time to do. But
Okay.
if I bought like, and I always used to buy just like a sack of Blanchard all blades. You probably start off on a fine Waterstone, and because it'll help you to keep shape, because you don't necessarily want to polish the shape away. And polish them a bit, but then I'd put them on to like we use polishing machines for buckles and stuff.
Yeah.
So I've got quite a substantial head start in that I can just poke it at a polishing machine
Yeah.
and get a lot of the scratches polished out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's
but
one
it
of.
makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things why I like about, um, people who like you who actually had like formal training in saddlery, because if it was like with cheating, like people like me who have just picked up the craft and we've learned how to make items, but you have the full background of.
Well, I mean, yes and no, but a lot of what I do is self-taught as well.
Yeah.
Nobody's taught me to make watch straps or wallets or calf belts or any of that kind of stuff. We do the basics of what we do is semantically correct, but loads of the stuff that we do, the Master Saddlers Association would have a blue fit about. And we're not master saddlers, and we don't do, or a lot of the stuff we do, they totally completely wouldn't think is the right technique. But it just because it's not in the book doesn't make it right. It just means that that's what we've had to invent in order to kind of miniaturize and do all of that kind of stuff. And there's nothing at all wrong with self-teaching. It helps if you've got somebody who can teach you, but the internet and YouTube and Instagram's a wonderful resource, and you can pick up a lot of stuff. And certainly I have. If you want to do a particular thing and you've got nobody to help you do it, then you kind of have to work it out, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And you're not cheating. And there's good reasons for doing things in the right way, and it helps to know that. And it does obviously help to have some sort of formal background. But do not in any way diminish what you've learned by yourself, because there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. Oh no, that's great to hear, because
it's a craft, not a this isn't, well, even mechanical engineering, like a lot of people teach themselves, and obviously you don't want a bridge to fall down and stuff, and you need some formal education. But you look at Instagram and look at how many engineers are self-taught and just make stuff because it's fun and they want to learn things. And it's how making things works. It's how you learn. You learn by making things, don't you?
Yeah. No, I think that makes a lot more sense, and it's true, because when I saw when I was trying to figure out how to do the symmetrical stitch, and just like you have access to that little clip, like, and that, and you have to come up with it yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I'm just going back. So are you sure? So doing the right hand pricking iron, left hand pricking iron. So that gives you that symmetrical, both front end.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because in my
So if you look, right. So this is your. I need things. I as you can see, I'm not in a workshop, so we will have to ad lib.
So why is it
when? Well, in fact, we won't ad lib. We'll use a piece of paper.
Okay. So just before you explain it, so why is it when you use a stitching chisel and you punch all the way through, it's on the same angle, you don't get that symmetrical?
You do actually. It's not as pronounced because the hole is. So remember, with a stitching chisel or a pricking iron driven all the way through, the hole is coming out of the leather. It's not going into the leather.
Yeah.
When you use a pricking iron on the front, it's going into the leather, and the going into the leatherness makes a big difference.
Wow. I've never thought of that ever.
It helps the stitch to sit significantly. Massively amateurish drawing coming up.
Oh, your camera's
which you probably won't
off
be
as
able to see anyway. Oh, is it?
Yeah.
It's not intentionally off.
Whereas... Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure, so I just didn't ask.
No.
Oh, there you are.
It might not be a bad thing from the point of view of bandwidth. Right. So can you see that?
Yeah. Yep.
So top is right. Well, I can't, I'm not sure which way around I've drawn it anyway, but one is right, one is left. So if you visualize them folding together like that, the prick marks become mirror images of each other. And the thing with that is that both sides are pricked, so you've got a depression in the leather on both sides.
Yeah.
So you've done everything that you can in order to make the thread sit nicely, and that's what gives you the symmetry. If you were to prick all the way through with, for example, a KSB pricking iron, you'd get exactly the same hole, although it would be coming out of the back rather than going in. So you wouldn't get as nice a stitch on the back, but it would be symmetrical in as much as, well, it would be angled, and it would be consistent, and it would be neat.
Yeah, because I know that it goes from... Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just going to say it was. What was I going to say? You would always, presuming that you want the optimum result, you would always reverse prick if you are able to, as in it's multiple layers that you're sticking together. And that you can line them up. if it is a thing that you can't do that with, for example, a watch strap, because you'd never be able to line up the holes and stuff because it's a 3D object and lining it up's functionally impossible. You can't ever line up the lining with the face because you kind of make it all in one go. You would have to use something. You can only prick the front, basically.
Yeah.
So you would, if you wanted as tidy a back as you possibly could, you would use basically a very refined stitching chisel, which is effectively a KSB or an Amy Young, Amy Roke pricking, something that's designed to prick all the way through. Which a normal pricking iron isn't designed to do that. You can do it with a Blanchard or an Abbey pricking iron in a thin leather, but they're not really designed to do it. And so what you end up with is a really fat hole, because those pricking irons are like that, and they're designed to go in and stop. Mm-hmm. Whereas something like a KSB or something like that is like that. It's very, very parallel. So it's functionally equivalent to an awl going all the way through.
Yeah.
So with a KSB, what it means is that it's effectively creating perfect awl work. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's
yes,
it's almost like I'm interested in stitching, isn't it?
Oh, I find it so fascinating, honestly. Because that's the thing. Because if the stitching doesn't look good, it just ruins the whole product.
It does, yeah.
I know. I love this. I love the stitching. So yeah, because if you do use the awl on such a like a 2.8 hole per inch sort of thing, is that opening the hole too much? Because especially like the Abbey ones, they're so close to each other. Is it?
No, I mean that's 2.7 is a number 10.
I think.
No, that's absolutely fine. That's for relatively fine work.
Okay.
But no, that's perfectly okay. And like the Abbey ones won't be designed to penetrate all the way through. So if you beat them through a piece of leather, you're going to get a big hole on the surface.
Yeah.
And so the holes will kind of look closer together.
Okay.
But those are pricking irons, so they're designed to mark the grain. They're not designed to penetrate all the way through.
Okay.
If we're using a KSB or something like that, you wouldn't want to use a KSB on a piece of bridal leather. Really, it would be something thin. It would be like a calf something or something like that. But yeah, I suppose it's using the right pricking iron for the right task, and using basically, if you want nice stitching in bridal leather, you need to prick and then use an awl. You don't really have a choice, because there are no pricking irons that are designed to be driven through 4 mil of bridal leather that aren't going to just leave a massive hole in the surface.
Yeah.
So it's impossible to get nice stitching like that. It's just there's no way of doing it.
So with the because I know that when you go all the way through, it goes from right to left on the front side and left to right on the back side. Doing it your way, you get right to left, right to left.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. You see, I would never have thought that ever. It's some.
Would you? No, I'm not wearing one of my watch straps, which is a slightly unusual thing. You might recognise that.
Yeah.
Do you recognise that?
Yeah, I like that. Is that from the video?
Yes, that's the wallet that's the wallet from the Lloyd coat wallet video.
You should,
which is quite a cool thing.
You should put that on You should put it on auction. See, you might get something for
it. So this is all reverse printed. Actually, because it was made whilst I had a camera in my face, the stitching isn't particularly amazing. Can you actually? I don't know how is the.
No, it's like.
Is my picture quality awful? Yeah, it's you can't really see. But so looking at that, so
that's aged well. That wallet. That's aged really good.
Yeah, actually, I didn't really use it for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It's only been relatively recently that I've used it. I'm trying to find a really good example because I'm intrigued. So no, you've got the opposite because the two threads are still doing that.
Okay, it's just a cleaner.
But they're doing, yeah. They're kind of doing that basically, because like when you stitch, you follow the stitch lines, don't you? So you've got the two halves of the thread, and you've got them up into the two opposing corners of the stitch.
Yeah.
So you've got one there, and you've got one up, and then you effectively you reverse to the next stitch, don't you?
Yeah. I was making my friend a missile cover a couple of days ago, and I found that when I was pulling it like this, because it was only one piece of leather, 1.5 millimeters, I was just having some terrible time with it. Like a thin piece of leather, I find that you have to pull. If I pull straight and do like a little tug, it will make it really nice. But I find if it's like a more leather, you can get away with doing that all the way through.
Thicker leather's way easier. Thin leather's really hard. If it gets thin enough, you simply can't cast at all. But there's loads of variations of the saddle stitch for different circumstances like that, and as you gain experience, you work out what's going to happen in particular circumstances, and there are lots of little compromises to make as to how you want the stitch to look. It's always difficult if you want the stitch on both sides to look nice. That's the hardest situation, really, is working out how to do that.
Yeah. Going back to your book, you actually reminded me. So you're writing the book.
Yeah.
I saw that on your Instagram, and it's like Charlie put me down for like pre-order, like first copy, like signed first copy.
There will certainly be some signed copies. It's hopefully due out at the back end of this year. It's getting there slowly. Still plenty of work to do. And then it'll obviously take a while in production and stuff. Relatively small book, kind of an introductory guide with hopefully some stuff in there for everybody. But not discussing stitching in the depth that we've just discussed it now, for example. It's a book to kind of get you going, really. I suppose you could say it's not designed as an accompaniment to like the YouTube channel and stuff, but I suppose if you were looking at the YouTube channel thinking I'd like to have a go at this, not really knowing where to start, it's for you at that point of your career. I'd quite like to write something that is discussing stitching at a greater depth than we've been talking about it, because I've spent an awful lot of my life stitching, and it's a subject I really enjoy. And kind of aspect is really interesting. So I hope there'll be more books. But the first one is well, I should really be writing because deadlines are looming. I'm looking at this, and actually I suspect I was talking rubbish. The stitching on both sides of this is definitely angled the same, and this was definitely stitched all the way through. Yeah, no, it definitely is. I can't show you. It's really deceiving because when you look at something from one side, you turn it round to look at the other. So the stitch angle looks like it's different on both sides. But if you do it from start off from there and then flip it, so you're looking at the stitching all the way around, it's definitely the same angle on both sides.
Is it so right to left, right to left?
Yeah, that was stitched by a lefty, so it's the other way around. But yeah.
Wow, that's I would never have thought of that. That's okay. So when you're a left-hander, it goes from left to right.
Because you'd use the left hand pricking iron on the front, so everything is backwards.
Yeah.
It gets really complicated and really confusing.
Yeah. How much will your book be, by any chance? Just.
Do you know what? I can't remember. That being in the hands of the publishers, I'm concerning myself with the writing and the photography rather than the evil commerce. But I don't think it'll be particularly expensive. I suspect kind of teens of pounds. But so it's hopefully it's fairly accessible, I think. And I think it will also be available on the Kindle and stuff like that as well, which might be cheaper again. but I should know the answer really, but unfortunately I don't
Yeah.
uh, at the moment.
Yeah. No, I want to get one. That's for sure. So,
Well,
um,
what I think what we'll try to do is we'll have them on the website and stuff as well.
yeah.
So obviously they'll be available in all good bookshops, etc. But will also be available directly from us,
Oh, that's handy.
and via Instagram and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah. The Lloyd coat. Oh, do you want to answer that or not worry about that?
So
The Lloyd coat.
about why did we shoot the video, or about the wallet itself?
Sort of both.
The
Yeah.
the wallet itself, well, the design was based around the design of a wallet I inherited from my grandfather. I found in a chest of drawers. In fact, I inherited from my grandfather, and I've always quite liked wallets. I used to have a style called a farmer's wallet. That I had from when I was quite young, and it was silk lined, so it fell to bits in the end. And I wanted to get another one, and Swain Aidney Brigg, I think, were the only people that made them at one time. But then they stopped making them when I wanted to get one. So I could not find the wallet that I wanted, and I had this one of my grandfather's, and I thought, well, okay, we'll make basic design from this, and I did, and I can't remember. I think it was that was the point at which we decided to shoot the Lloyd Coat wallet. So I think you can't see now, but I'm holding in my hand the second Lloyd Coat wallet ever made. I made a prototype in leather. I probably made several prototypes in paper, which is what I normally do.
Yeah.
But the second one ever made was filmed,
Wow.
and people watched it. 5 million people watched it being made, and yeah. I think in terms of why we chose it for a video, it's just an interesting thing to watch being made, really, isn't it? I think that was primarily the inspiration. Like we'd shot the Lined and Raised film probably the year earlier, or it might even have been in the same year. It might have been 6 months earlier. And I guess we were between us thinking, what should we shoot for the next one? Because people seem to like it, so we should do it again. And we were working on wallets, so we thought, well, why not shoot a wallet? And yeah, it was the right product at the right time, and that was why we did it.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. It's yeah, I like that wallet. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's quite cool to have it. And it's nice to have it. That's why I started using it again. It's such a shame to not use it.
Yeah.
Because it's 5 million people have watched it being made. It sort of seems a bit of a shame not to use it. So I have been, and it's quite nice having a little bit of Equus history.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Did you sell many from that video? Did it? Because I remember I think I was reading.
It's impossible to say for certain. I mean, yes, some. Not a massive kind of earth-shattering number or anything. We didn't have a massive, huge run on wallets or anything. Because ultimately they're expensive things, and the majority of the people watching it didn't even look at the website, let alone go and buy anything. We definitely have sold things as a result of it. It's hard to quantify, really. But I think it's more perhaps people know our name a bit more now than we've sold lots of wallets off the back of it, really.
Yeah. And that sort of the next question ties into what we were talking about before, where, because like you said, the videos you shoot are the tools you use every day. It's not just
Absolutely.
We're doing
So, and the I mean, you can't, particularly for the more complicated products, you can't really shoot stuff in a linear manner because it takes quite a long time to make some of the products. So, for example, for the attaché case, we didn't shoot the the making of it in a linear manner, because it takes a week to make one of the cases,
Yeah.
and you can't realistically have a film crew sitting around for a day or two whilst you do something boring, until you pick them up for 10 minutes. So we made, I think, 3 pre-prepared kind of stages of briefcase.
Yeah.
So you could start off with cutting of the leather and stuff,
Yeah.
and then move on in a reasonably timely manner to the next stage. And like the processes that you see in the videos, or talking about the attaché one in particular, the processes that you see in the video are the real processes.
Yeah.
But there has to be a certain amount of kind of to
Yeah.
kind of make the timelines work.
Yeah.
And everything that has been done to the thing that you see is the thing that you see being done. It just might have happened to version 1 or version 2 of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely, yeah. Like my workbench is my workbench, and I've moved things around ever so slightly since the coat wallet video. But my workbench is about 8 inches away from where it was in that video. And the clams that you see in the video are the clams that I was using earlier on today. And I mean, it's probably not 100% identical, but it's 99.5% identical. Yeah. It's just yeah.
Okay.
It is. People quite often don't believe it, but it is.
Wow.
The filming is reality. It's reality made to look tidy and quite pretty, but it is reality.
That's nice. I like that. So you cut all your leather by hand. You don't use like leather dyes, like to.
Well, we use dyes for one or two things. For the watch straps, in some of the sizes we use dyes, because the tolerances for the watch straps are so incredibly fiddly, that if you want to repeatedly cut 20.25 millimeters tapering to 17.99 millimeters, a dye is actually the best solution to that. We cut quite a lot of the watch straps by hand because people want weird sizes, but we use dyes a little bit for them. But for example, for basically everything else we don't. Like the pictures you might have seen earlier on Instagram, of a batch of briefcases. They were completely all cut by hand, which took probably 2 days to cut out all the panels for 4 briefcases. So there are elements of using machines a little bit in there, but pretty much we do it all by hand, really.
Yeah, I do like your briefcases. Well, that's the thing. 'Cause I'm not really against dyes, because it's easier just to.
There's a time and a place for them.
Yeah, like exactly. Especially when you like you said, tolerances and it's just you get in the shape of the leather. There's still many things you have to do to the leather that you can ruin it. So.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So as your business grew, because you're doing things, that are so precise and using pricking nines and that sort of stuff. So as your business grows and you get more customers, was there a point where you sort of had that? We can get machines to do this sort of stuff. It would be a lot more easier because we're getting more customers. Was it hard
would
to?
Be a lot easier. No, I mean, it's not hard to make the decision because it's the right decision to make. Fundamentally, what we do is about making stuff by hand, and the obvious decision would be, right, well, do we just get some sewing machines and some sewing machine operators, and that would make life an awful lot easier. And it absolutely totally would make life an awful lot easier. And it's what more or less everybody else does at a certain stage of their business life, is they either offshore everything or they mechanize everything. And we always have and continue to resist any temptation to do it, despite the fact that it would make life immeasurably easier, really. Because it's not actually what we do. It's not the root of our stuff is that it's handmade, and it seems like it would be the wrong thing to do to change that, which is possibly a slightly silly decision to make, but it's what we've always done and what I intend that we'll continue to, really.
Yeah, that's great. I like that.
And it's I mean, there's with stuff like saddle stitching, it does make life very difficult because it's a difficult thing to learn. It's therefore difficult to recruit people who are useful. It takes years to train them if you do recruit them, and all of that kind of stuff. So it's kind of quite a big commitment to doing things properly. But I think it's also why we have a fairly unique business, and hopefully people like what we do and kind of come back to us and stuff. And I guess it's what makes us not unique, but it's our USP, I suppose, that we do things in the way that we do them, and we try to be really explicit in like saying what we do and how we do it, and that is how we do it. And we've got a little bit more machinery than we had when we first started, but pretty minor amounts, really.
And that's the thing.
For instance, we don't own a single sewing machine. There are 0 sewing machines on the premises, even for prototyping and stuff, where it would be probably sensible. We just don't own one. So we can't use one.
Wow. So then how do customers take that? Because, like you said, I read on your website, you say we prioritize good over fast. This flies in the face of the Amazons of this world, etc. But it's the core of what we do. How do some customers take that when you tell them, hey, this is going to take 8 weeks to make or 12 weeks to create? Is there
generally quite well?
Okay.
To be honest. I mean, some people have completely failed to notice the point of the business, obviously, and are surprised that it's not going to appear tomorrow. But I mean, generally speaking, people have taken on board what it is that we do, which is why they bought from us. But actually, even the ones that haven't, if you explain the ethos behind why things take a while, they get it and they buy into it and they like it. And I mean, if they don't, then that's fine, they don't. And there's not much we can do about that. We either don't sell things to them, which is fine, or, that's it, really. But on the whole, people get it and like it. Not everybody. And you have to expectation manage and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, pretty well on the whole. Okay. It's what we've always done. We've always had a waiting list. We've always had a queue. If things take longer than you told people they would take, then they can get a little more bored by the process. But generally speaking, people are fine about it. Is our understanding. We try to stick to our timescales as much as we can, because that's when people can get a bit frustrated, which is completely understandable. But we still, nonetheless, even at that point, we still maintain good, not quick. And there is only so fast we can go, and there's only so fast we will go, because we make things the way that we make them, and that's just the good, not quick.
Because you have I've noticed on your website you say that you have a small team. Does one person make each individual product, or is it sort of split between? Workers?
No, it pretty much is. Always one person makes one thing, really. If there's an apprentice, then at stages in their apprenticeship, their job is probably helping somebody else, because that's how you learn. So at that point, you couldn't say as convincingly that one person makes one thing, because they've probably got an apprentice who might be edge finishing for them, or doing stuff like that. And there are times, obviously, when we help each other out and things like that, or somebody does somebody a favor and helps. But generally speaking, one person makes one thing. Because somebody has to be responsible for that thing. Because if you don't have ownership of the thing, then whose problem is it if it's not very good? It's got to be somebody's problem. So it's really important that somebody has ownership of a thing being made, and it's their thing to make sure that it's good. I think.
No, I do like that, because you like the typical manufacturing is like one person does, or in my case, it was just one person doing one thing constantly, and
Yeah,
it you know, when I first got into leatherwork, it's I think what drew me, you know, when you're making something for someone, you put in everything into that one thing. You know, it's not just cutting the
yeah,
leather out and passing it on to someone else. It's like you're doing the cutting, the stitching, the burnishing.
yeah,
All of you are is in that one product, and it just
yeah. I agree.
I find that even if you are a worker, it's more inspiring as opposed to if you're just
Yeah, absolutely.
cutting cutting all day and
No,
that's it.
definitely, definitely. No, I completely agree. It's really important that somebody has ownership of a product. If you want the product to be good, you make better products like that. It's more efficient to have an assembly line technique, but you make better products having a workshop technique where a person makes a thing.
Yeah. So some of the so this is I guess I'll sort of mold these questions together. So what items are you inspired by, and sort of talking about like that briefcase and that attaché case, because I know that your style is very English and that
Yeah.
classical English, and that's my style as well. I think that's why I like your website so well, because it's
Mm.
that smooth, elegant but simple English style. And I know that like if you look at Japanese and South Korea, Taiwan, they sort of have that
Mm.
English style
They
as
do
well.
actually. Yeah, they do. Different kind of color palette.
Hmm.
But yeah, they definitely do. Yeah, I agree. I like a lot of the Japanese and Korean stuff,
Yeah.
both tools and leatherwork. So some of them are really, really, really good. Like really, really good.
Hmm.
Um, Better than me certainly. Some of the work they produce is beautifully clean and uh, just immaculate, really.
Yeah.
If Instagram is to be believed, anyway. I mean, I think I kind of look back at the old leather work. Really,
Yeah.
that's what tends to inspire me. I think that the probably the heyday of leather skill has passed, and possibly we're working back towards it again. But I think probably well, back end of the 19th century, start of the 20th century, really was
Hmm.
when the leather work was at its peak. And if you look at some of the hand stitching and stuff that was done then, in some of the goods that you can still find kicking around, that some of the work was amazing and beautifully done, with some machinery, but a lot of it was by hand.
Yeah.
So I often look back for inspiration rather than looking forward. But I agree. I think there's a lot of nice stuff coming out of Japan and Korea now, and I definitely look at photographs of some of the guys on Instagram. I'm pleased that they're on a different continent than me, um, and and we're not competing for all the same customers because they're doing really really good stuff.
Yeah, it's
Um,
remarkable. Like
and I get
shell quarter vanish wallets and
yeah, yeah, just lovely clean work. Which that's what I like to for us to produce is clean,
hmm
elegant, uh, not masses of detail, but just kind of the not overworked, kind of really pristine looking, clean stuff. And a lot of those guys are doing exactly that. And I guess it's the traditional designs, but kind of tweaked a bit, I suppose, and kind of contemporary designs, but certainly a lot of my inspiration for the shapes and all of that kind of stuff is kind of, I guess, 1920s,
yeah,
really 1910s, 1920s maybe.
yeah, yeah, and
And my own archive of stuff, really, I suppose.
yeah, yeah. I like the same style. It's just a yeah. It's like it's a complete style, but it's so simple.
Yeah.
It's talking about your briefcase and your attaché.
Mm.
That briefcase is absolutely remarkable. I was looking at photos of it, and it's just everything is just even down to the um, that little tag thing on the back. It's just the hand stitching and when it
Thank you.
and that's the thing is I know where you like your threads from, your buckles are from, and it's just like
Mm.
it's on point. How
Thank you. We tried hard with that. Yeah. We did our best to produce something good with that, and we like the bags and the cases. It's an interesting uh, thing to be working on, really.
Yeah, yeah. It's just yes, it's so classic. And with the attaché case, how did you?
Mm.
Because how did you come up with something like that? Because you have no, I imagine you would have had no experience in luggage making, and that's sort of same with the
No, none at
briefcase as
all.
well. How did you? Because you combined with two different companies to
Yeah, well,
make that.
the people that did the woodwork are our next door neighbours and my friend's company, basically, who are next door to us.
Mm-hmm.
So they are really, really, really good cabinet makers. So that was really easy because they just make really good things. But a guy that works for me who's really keen on casework and stuff, somebody that we both know that he did quite a bit of. I trained him many, many years ago. But anyway, the there's a really good case maker in a town where Rob used to live, and he made attaché cases, and he's slowly been retiring for years and years and years. And anyway, Rob wanted to make an attaché case, so he went to speak to this guy, and he guided him through the process and stuff, and that got us started, and we built loads of prototypes basically,
Mm-hmm.
and worked out with the guidance of this other case maker who had a really established pattern that was nice, but it was a little bit rustic in places. So there were kind of aspects where I thought we could do it better, and we redesigned a way of doing the interior so there were no cut edges anywhere, and it all fitted perfectly together and stuff like that. And all of the I hate kind of exposed fittings where you don't need exposed fittings and stuff like that. So anyway, we did lots of tweaking based around the pattern that this case maker who'd been working kind of since probably the 50s or 60s had. And so we were able to kind of to develop it quite quickly. We didn't have to start from literally a clean sheet of paper, which you could do, but it would take a lot of work.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did quite a lot of research and then made quite a lot of prototypes.
Yeah.
And we were lucky also. The cabinet makers next door are brilliant. Like they're kind of similar sort of people to us,
Mm-hmm.
and so what they turn out is exactly what the drawing says it should be,
Yeah.
and it just works, and that makes life much easier.
Yeah.
So it very much a team effort, the attaché.
Yeah. So when you were stitching those corners on, like where the leather meets, did you stitch through the wood, or is it just you stitching?
No,
Um,
you can stitch through the wood. You can
okay.
stitch through the wood. It's cedar, so it's quite soft.
Okay. Yeah. 'Cause
So,
yeah, I wasn't
so
sure.
you're all, no, there are different ways of doing it. You can stitch around it, or you can stitch through it. Both are valid techniques. I mean, you have to decide which one you're doing,
Yeah.
because they have different cases. But that ours is stitched through,
Wow. Okay.
and your all will go through cedar,
Okay.
which is what the carcass is made from.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why it is made from cedar.
Yeah. Yeah. And like shoe trees are made from cedar as well, cedar wood.
Yes, yeah, for similar reasons. Good to deter insects, all that kind of stuff. Good for humidity and moisture, and yeah, exactly the same reason that shoe trees are made from it, and they're light,
Yeah.
which of course you want an attaché case to be.
So yeah. So I guess that would make sense in the if it's getting wet, the attaché case, so it wouldn't damage the wood if it got wet.
I mean, it would damage it less. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
in an ideal world, it wouldn't get wet, but yeah, it'll survive better if it
Yeah.
does.
Okay. Yeah. So because your products take so long to develop,
Mm,
and I say that in a good way, not in a bad way, because
yeah. Well,
um,
it's both actually, but yeah.
is there um, do you get impatient that it takes so long? Because
Yeah, I can do. You can get paralysed by well, by not having enough time to develop them, because they take
Yeah.
ages to develop, which is what happens a lot. Also, you can get paralysed by perfectionism,
Yeah.
which also happens a lot, in as much as you're only prepared to produce as perfect things as you can, and therefore quite often things don't happen because they're not going to be perfect.
Yeah.
So yes, I never really by the time, but by the fact that things don't get developed when there's lots of good ideas. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's never enough hours in the day,
Yeah.
and given more hours in the day, there would be more a broader product range.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, there isn't. So
Yeah. So the next question. So the 200-year-old Russian leather.
yes,
I mean, I was talking to a mate about it the other day, and I showed him some photos, and yeah, you made that watch strap and that sort of stuff. And I tried to find some,
yeah.
and good luck, pretty much.
Yeah. I don't think
What's
there is any available for sale anywhere. Not to my knowledge, anyway. It was more readily available going back some time,
yeah,
but really, there's a few small people like us who have some, and Cleverly, I think, has some. I think Swain Aidney Brigg, no, Purdy's probably have some, but basically it's all gone
yeah,
in as much as it's all with the people who will ultimately make stuff with it.
yeah,
And I don't think the people who make stuff with it have very much left, really, at all,
yeah,
because it was all recovered a long time ago.
yeah. Yes,
It's not still. There's still quite a lot on the sea bottom, but I think all of it that can be recovered has been recovered,
yeah,
and it's obviously by night. There's a ship's worth, and that's it, and it was recovered quite a long time ago.
yeah.
So yeah, it's basically unavailable.
Wow.
I come across kind of offcuts and things like that from time to time from people, just from contacts in the trade. But really, basically, it is no longer commercially available, other than as a product from somebody that's got some.
Yeah. So could you tell the story of the how what had like
Of the
just
leather,
yeah, and sort of
roughly,
how you got hands on it.
I'm not a massive. Well, the I know a guy who knows the person that did the recovering,
Wow.
and I get my leather from him, basically, and he's got a little bit left,
Yeah.
and I hope to get a little bit more from him at some point,
Mhm.
but that's it basically.
Yeah.
So as ever, it's who you know rather than what you know.
Yeah.
But he was a friend of the guy that did the diving. So he made cases from this stuff kind of in the 70s and
Wow.
80s,
Wow.
when it was a bit expensive, but it was not, it was a cool and interesting leather with a good
Yeah.
story, and it was, it might have been half as expensive again as normal leather, but that was it.
Yeah.
So it wasn't particularly rare or anything, because there was a whole shipload, and you don't really think, well, in 30 years this will run out and it'll be worth a fortune.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm just lucky to know him, really. So yeah, that's where we get ours from. Can't mention any names and all of that kind of stuff, obviously, but yeah, that's where we get ours from.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have it like one step away from the original finder, because I wouldn't be at all surprised if there isn't stuff with rather dodgy provenance kicking around,
Yeah.
to be perfectly honest. But
Yeah.
at least I can be confident that I know exactly where ours did come from.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. So it was. I'm just looking it up. So the Russian reindeer leather,
Russian
stamps
reindeer.
stamped in the
Yeah,
1786. So when you
1786 in the.
oh, go on.
I was going to say in the Bristol Sound. The whether in fact it is reindeer, nobody really knows. There's no
Okay.
actual proof it's reindeer. It was looked at by a group of experts when it was recovered, and they all scratched their chin and they thought, well, not sure what this is. Possibly it could be reindeer. To my knowledge, it's never been DNA tested or anything. I don't know if you can even do that with leather of this vintage. But the consensus of opinion was it was reindeer. But of this type of leather, I think 98% or something of it ever made was in fact calf. So the balance to probability, I think, is actually it's calf, but officially it's reindeer.
Yeah.
Because it seems incredibly unlikely that, given how small an amount of the leather that was made was reindeer, that this is reindeer.
Okay.
But perhaps I'm being too literal in my interpretation of the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a really interesting leather. It's an output of pre-revolutionary Russia, and it was a fairly key Tsarist output, and it was the method of production was kept secret. I don't know how it was controlled, but anyway, it was kept secret. And after the fall of the Tsars, the secret was lost, and thus the leather stopped being made anymore.
Wow.
Yeah, which is interesting, but it was a really big production item. It was really common. It was used for loads of stuff. It was bookbinding. It was upholstery. It was military stuff. I can't remember if it was used for shoes, but I suspect it was for like all kinds of things. Because rather like cedar, it's quite oily. It's quite repellent for insects and all the kind of stuff that would have been important 150 years ago. So its story is really interesting. It's a really interesting leather to work with. I was working with some this morning. It's two watch straps, the leather from different skins, and they're entirely different to each other, different color, different texture, look totally different. If I didn't know exactly what they were, if I put them in front of you, you wouldn't identify it as the same leather in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah. So is it?
But obviously,
Oh, you can. Sorry.
I was going to say, it's obviously the conditions the leather's been in under the sea varies and all of that kind of stuff. So you get quite different kind of looks from different pieces.
Yeah. So is it? So they don't know how it was tanned at all. They have no idea.
There's no historical documents detailing how it was tanned.
Okay. Yeah.
People have researched it, and like we work with bakers quite a lot in Devon, and their cur de Rossi that we use for stuff like our attaché and stuff is basically a modern version of the Russian calf.
Yeah.
And they did it by research. Basically, they worked out how it was done, and did lots of prototyping, and produced a leather that was basically identical. There's no method that has been written down as such. It's only through kind of working stuff out that we know, really.
Yeah. So bakers know how they actually sell like a replica sort of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, which we use a lot. The cur de Rossi leather that we use is effectively a replica of the Russian reindeer or Russian calf. It's calf leather.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much indistinguishable, really, from the Metacaterina leather, really.
Yeah. So with that reindeer calf, the Russian leather, is it a thick leather or is it a thin? Like, what sort of would it be? 1.5 millimeters.
It varies.
Okay.
No, it's normally thicker than that, but it varies quite a lot. It does vary quite a lot. You can find it up to 2.5. It's quite a variable leather. Their splitters would have been pretty inconsistent, and I think the leather on the ship it would have been relatively unsplit, so it would have been thinner at the shoulder and stuff like that. But yeah, it kind of varies from kind of 1.4 to probably 2.5.
Yeah. So do you have much of it? Because you said you...
A little bit left.
Okay.
Not masses, like not making a briefcase worth, but a bit. Yeah, we've got a few watch straps and stuff like that to hand, and maybe a wallet or two and things like that, and I might be able to get my hands on a little bit more, but yeah, like really small quantities,
Oh, that's remarkable. And it would be expensive to get some, I guess.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, and right, it's probably the rarest leather in the world, I suspect.
Wow. So when you do make your watch straps with it, because like you said, there probably would be knockoffs and all that sort of stuff. Do you have to provide like documentation to the customer to?
Not really. I mean,
Okay.
it's just kind of on trust, really, isn't it?
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
we know the provenance, and people know us, and that's it, really. I mean, whether people want documentation and provenance, I'm not sure, but there isn't really any documentation or provenance for any of it, other than kind of from a company saying, well, this is Russian reindeer, because there was never any documentation provided with it in the first place.
Yeah. Okay. No,
So you kind of at that point you're already knackered, aren't you? Really, because if the guy that recovered it didn't provide any documentation, then any documentation after that inherently is probably
true.
dubious. But no, it's simply any provenance or any documentation anybody comes up with is probably fake anyway. So no.
Okay. Yeah, so don't look for anyone who's selling you documentation.
No, if it has documentation, it's probably fake.
Yeah. Um, so sort of these two tie in together. So advice for crafters with their businesses, how to be a craftsman and a businessman. So there's sort of, and then sort of like how do you leave your mark? Because obviously the internet has just exploded. Like you're not competing with a leather worker down the road. You're competing with people in different continents. So with the craftsman, this is sort of so it's probably not an accurate point, but sort of just for the sake of argument. So the craftsman wants to make beautiful things out of the most expensive leather, etc., thread buckles. But then the businessman wants to not every businessman, but just for the question, wants to like cut costs, maximize profit. As a craftsman and a business owner, how do you balance the two?
Well, I'm not sure I do. I invariably do the first. In that I invariably use the most expensive leather and buckles and thread and stuff. And the only bit of being a businessman going on is attempt to charge an appropriate price for the cost of materials and time that we're using. But I see no problem whatsoever in using all of the most expensive stuff that I can come across, provided it's also the nicest stuff I can come across. And that's literally exactly what we do. If you're going to go to the trouble of making something by hand, I can't see one of the maxims we've always used within the business is you can't compete with China, and it's not even worth it. So don't even go there. If you don't want to make an expensive product, don't bother making it by hand, because you're just on a hiding to nothing. You can't compete with Amazon and eBay, and you never will really. The people that do compete with China probably have a factory and are probably doing all of the things that you say, cutting all of the corners that you talk about, and probably making more money than I am, in fairness. So I'm not sure. I'm not necessarily a source of good advice, in as much as I am 100% on the use the most expensive stuff you can find end of the scale. And we try to make that work through stuff like the videos and educating people why using the most expensive stuff you can find is actually a good idea, and why paying for it is a good idea. And that's what we try to do. Is we try to say, well, look, this is what we do, and this is why it's a good thing, and this is why you should pay us for it. And hopefully enough people agree with us that they do, and that's basically our business model. And if you're making stuff by hand, I slightly struggle to see the value in another way of doing it. Really, it's quite a hard one. I'm sure there are others there, other business models, but I've never seen a clear way of doing it. Really. You've seen the factory world of leather production.
Yeah.
And even that's not competing with China because the RM stuff's quite expensive.
Well,
I bet.
Well, it's more so in that sort of business world. It's sort of instead of one craftsman doing all the items, it's split
production
into
line stuff.
Yeah, it's split into one person,
Yeah.
and because that increases speed, because it's still a bit handcraft.
Which it clearly does. Yeah, I mean, I'm very much an all or nothing person.
Yeah.
And I think if you're gonna do it, you may as well do it properly. And try and make the best of whatever it is that you're trying to make, and that's the only model I've ever really been interested in. And I do. I mean, I think the only other way that you could do it is go 100% the other way. If your interest was making money, you would either have to factory produce stuff in your native country, as well as you could, whilst keeping costs very, 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 very much under control, and jump on the "it's made in my home country" bandwagon, be it UK, USA, wherever, which I think in America would work, in the UK would probably work if you could build that factory, but it's a very precarious position to be in. And a very difficult position to be in, and we get lots of people contact us saying, well, we'd like to make X, Y, and Z for our business, and we're trying to find somebody to make it. And in the UK, at least, people actually making things is a really rare thing. I imagine it probably is in Australia as well, because there's so much production gone to China that actually trying to find somebody that can make anything is really difficult.
Yeah, and it's also the university has been through my schooling, it's like university, and you sort of
and then it's all academic stuff. And that's all. It's obviously good and useful, but not helpful if you want to make things really. So I mean, I don't know whether that's actually good advice or not, but I'm 100% clear on what we do.
Yeah.
And we just go and find the best of whatever it is that we need and use it.
Yeah.
And I don't think.
Well,
carry on.
Yeah, well, the couple of things, because the trades that you are familiar with are more so like the electrician, carpentry, and you don't really you forget about shoemaking, leatherwork, and all that sort of stuff. But to your point, I actually quite like that answer, because it's like you said, it's like an all or nothing, and you can focus on the all. It's not like you're trying to lower the bar,
always try and raise the bar.
Yeah,
that's always the game. Is if in doubt, make it better.
Yeah,
and you've got to be a bit careful you don't make your prices completely insane, and you've got to if you want to sell something expensively because you've used really good materials, you've got to be able to back up what you're saying about what you're making with the thing you're physically making. You've got to be able to turn out the work. You can turn really, really expensive materials into a really rubbish product really easily. So you've got to actually walk the walk as well as talk the talk. We always say you sell the sizzle, but you have to deliver the sausage.
Yeah.
But if you can do that, then the only business model of value, as I say, I think is always upping the ante and always make it better, not worse. And the only direction the price should go is up. And value your time, value what you're doing, and sell it at an appropriate price. And try to find the audience for the thing that you want to make. Yeah. Don't devalue. Don't make the cheapest thing that you can find and then try to sell it to lots of people. Yeah. And I think all of these things are exactly the opposite of what you learn in business school. But to a certain extent, it's worked for us.
Yeah, I like that.
But you.
I was gonna say I like that because like if you sell a wallet or a belt for like $200 or something like that, or $150, you have to make that product look $150. It's not. Yeah, I got a sale.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the pressure to deliver as well.
Yeah, you've got to deliver. Yeah, you sell the sizzle, but you deliver the sausage, and you've got to deliver the sausage. Otherwise, the customer won't come back or will slag you off on the internet. Yeah. And that's you can't have that if you want to do it in the long run. But yeah, that would be my advice. And I mean, it's what we've always done. And it's a mistake to undervalue what you do. I think do the best that you can in all things, and people will come to you hopefully.
Yeah, and that sort of ties into the next one. So like when you so because there's such competition, leaving your mark, and that's sort of just been your mark that you've left. Like just don't try and fight these people. Just make it.
Just do your own thing. I mean, when we first started doing what we do, there weren't a lot of people doing it, and we kind of changed the way that the market operates to an extent. Like, no, people didn't offer kind of effectively bespoke stuff on the internet back in the day when we first started doing it. Like, you could choose black, brown, or a tan for a belt, and that was it. And like the way that we sell stuff and the X number of threads and X number of leathers and all that kind of stuff was a reasonably unique way of doing it. So back in the day, what we were doing was fairly innovative, really, and obviously every man and his dog's doing it now, which is fine. But thinking a little bit outside the box is always a good way of leaving your mark. But I think just doing you to 100% is the way of doing it, really. And like we probably have a reasonably coherent kind of house style now, and I think that's the way that we would try to not leave a mark, because that's something you do kind of in the past tense, isn't it? So if we were gone, what mark the mark we would probably leave if we were gone is probably actually the videos, which is slightly sad, and lots of leather goods in the world that hopefully people like. But in terms of thinking about how you're defined, I think we have a reasonably coherent look and style and kind of craftsmanship, and hopefully people would recognize what we do. Maybe some of them. And I think so. I don't know, does that answer the question?
No, that's quite satisfactory. It's just like in a competing world, and I think you just
in a competing. How do you compete in a competing world? I mean, I think I'll probably answer it in the same way. To be perfectly honest, I think you be yourself. You need to have a vision of what it is that you're trying to achieve, not stolen from somebody else, or a vision of what it is that you want to do and what you want to make, and you do it, and you're persistent. And if people buy into that, then you'll have success. If they don't, then possibly you won't, or you'll need to rethink your vision. But persistence and stubbornness and boneheadedness is the way forward in a lot of ways, I think. Because if you think, oh well, such and such a person is having success with that, I'll go do that. Like, you're not bringing anything unique to it really, unless you think, well, they're having success with that, but I can do it loads better. Then that's probably fine. But the thing that you bring to the game that is unique is you, and it's got to be, you've got to interpret whatever it is you're doing such that you're happy with it, that you like it, and all that kind of stuff. And it's your aesthetic judgment and your craftsmanship that makes it unique. And that's how you define your own stuff, really, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense now. I do. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense because you're like a cookie cutter. So
no, it's pointless. Again, don't compete with China. If all you're doing is copying other people's stuff, then it's you're bringing nothing to the table because you can't do somebody else better than they can do themselves. So you've got to develop your own style, or your own things, or whatever, and which is a gradual process, and everybody does it in a kind of in a gradual way. But I think you shouldn't ever just go and think, right, that looks good, I'll do that. It's got to be your own spin on it, be it different techniques or different leathers or different colours, or there's loads of ways of doing it differently, and it doesn't have to be different for different sake, but it's got to be your own take on whatever that thing is that you're making, such that it's unique to you. I think. Like, if you think about a cup is basically a cup, isn't it? But like, there's a gazillion different designs, some of whom will speak to some people and some of whom will speak to other people. And it's about the kind of the design elements that the cup maker has brought to that cup, isn't it? Because it's still just a cup, or a wallet is just a wallet. It's the different kind of ways of interpreting how it's made, and it could be the ethics behind it, or it could be the leathers that are used, or the stitching techniques. Like, there's so many facets that you can make your own, that it's thinking, right, I want to make an X. How do I do that such that it's my X, not somebody else's X?
Okay.
Really?
That makes a lot more sense. Thanks, Charlie, for coming on. Like, with your knowledge, it's been excellent to hear from you.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you very much for inviting me. It's lovely to talk to you. I hope I haven't been too incoherent or boring on the subject of saddle stitch.
No. I'm interested in stitching, so don't stress about that.
Good. It's a good thing.